Welcome, welcome, and thank you for joining us. My name is Enid Smith, and I'm a board member for Go Green Wilmette. Welcome to the Go Green Wilmette's Food Choices webinar, featuring experts from Village Farmstand in Evanston and Wild Onion Market in Chicago. Our program tonight focuses on how we can build community through our grocery shopping and support sustainable agriculture at the same time. This is a topic that's close to my heart. I was raised on a small dairy farm in Illinois, and I truly understand how important our farmers are to our communities. As an adult, I began to reconnect with the local food movement as a result of my efforts to reduce plastic waste in my home. I found that one of the best ways to reduce household waste was to buy produce that was in season and grown nearby. Buying food from people I had a relationship with and getting to know my farmer made cutting out waste easier and made eating more fun, of course. I currently work for a farmer at the Wilmette Farmers Market. You can find me there on Saturdays selling Michigan fruits and vegetables with the Freilicks finest fruits and vegetables. And also, before I introduce our guest, full disclosure, I am an employee of Village Farmstand, and I am an owner at Wild Onion Food Co-op. So our speakers tonight are Matt Wexler, a filmmaker, a sustainable food activist, a grocery entrepreneur, and founder of Village Farmstand in Evanston. And we're also welcoming Jillian Jason, president of the board of the Wild Onion Co-op, a community-owned grocery store preparing to open in Rogers Park in Chicago. So welcome to both of our speakers, and we'll hear from Matt first this evening.
Well, hello, everyone, and it's really great to be talking about what is probably my favorite topic, local food and how to access local food. And as Enid said, I actually did not come to the world of grocery as an interest in grocery. I came actually as a filmmaker, and in 2012, my wife took me to a farmer's market in the Green City Farmers Market. It was my first time at a farmer's market, and the experience kind of just blew my mind. It was flavors I had never experienced before. And I got to understand what seasonality really meant. And within 6 months, my wife and I started working on a documentary film. So I'm gonna share my screen here of tiny little presentation that hopefully gives you some visual insight into what I'm talking about. So that's me at the store. It's a small store, I'll say that. All right, so yes, I really, started in this grocery, food, agriculture interest in wanting to make a film about sustainable agriculture. And my wife she actually worked as an editor for Rick Bayless's television show, and so we had a connection to someone who really knew a lot about it, that being Rick. And when we asked him, who should we go interview for this film, and he said, you should talk to Marty Travis down in Fairbury, Illinois. And so that lower right corner, that's us interviewing Marty Travis. That was back in 2013 is really when we got started on the film. And in 2016 is not only when the film came out, but it's also when Bon Appetit named Chicago as the food capital, or the winner of their whatever food competition. And it was critical to the farmers in that area because it was a time when local food was really starting to make its way into a lot of these restaurants. And Marty was actually distributing for 25 farms at the time. And so he was a large part of building that. While I was making the film, what really blew my mind was learning about plant health. And this plant health pyramid, which was created by John Kempf, who's an agronomist, an agroecologist, whatever you want to call it, created this pyramid structure showing the 4 stages of plant health. And the majority of the foods that we eat that are available through conventional agriculture don't even make it to the bottom of the pyramid. pyramid. They don't even make it to that first level. And that first level is when a plant takes the energy from the sun and converts it into carbohydrates. And the second level is when the plant takes the energy from the sun and converts it into protein. And that third level is when the plant has so much excess energy that it actually creates lipids, it creates fats. And so the higher you go in terms of plant health, the more nutrient dense the products you eat are. And for a farmer to understand this is really important, because at the end of the day, a flavor is associated with the nutrient density, and the amazing products that are coming off of a lot of these farms that we're supplying restaurants and are now supplying Village Farmstand. What I found most amazing about it is you can really taste the flavor from the heirloom products that they're using, and you can understand that there is nutrient density there. And the other thing to note with this is that healthy plants make healthy soil. So healthy soil makes healthy plants, but the reverse is true too. So finding a group of farmers that was really invested in the idea of plant health really kind of made me more interested in the idea of getting into the food and agriculture world. All right, so cut to the pandemic, right? The pandemic hit in 2020, and these farmers who were supplying restaurants suddenly went from having 35 to 45 deliveries a week to having 0. And they were coming up, it was March, April, they were just starting to plant things. They didn't really have an avenue for their product. And so I started talking with Marty and started to understand a lot of the issues. The top right corner there picture is actually, it's down by, it's down on, what is that, on Armitage. It's like Armitage and Western by Middlebrow. And customers would just line up and pick up their groceries. And that was during the pandemic, the very first months of the pandemic. But it wasn't a sustainable path for Marty and the rest of his farmers. So we needed to figure out something. And I felt incredibly compelled to do something. And so in talking with Marty, I came up with this concept of Village Farmstand, a place where you can order groceries from these farmers online, and it's a small shop, and you can go and you can pick up your products. And it's not necessarily open every day a week, but it's more or less a full-time farmers market. And so we opened in basically September of 2020, and it was a big help for the farmers. That year, the farmers ended up 40% up on their business for the year. And the following year, they actually did nearly twice as much business. So it really injected a lot of money into these rural economies that struggle to find an avenue when they're surrounded by a whole bunch of corn and soybeans. So that is the gist of kind of how Village Farmstand has started. But because I'm a filmmaker, I figured, well, I might as well share a video of the whole thing, right? So, all right, so I'm going to share that with you all now, and this gives you kind of a nice little presentation idea of what the whole thing is.
Think back to spring of 2020. Evanston was a bit different back then. In central Illinois, farming was a challenge. Farmers who typically supplied the restaurants found themselves in a bit of a bind. They needed to pivot.
We've always wanted to provide food to individuals. It became imperative that we figure it out very quickly.
So farmers started working together, filling individual orders and taking them up to the city, rain or shine.
We realized that we as farmers are farmers and we're not packing companies. And that became an issue in time, labor, all of those things.
We figured we could help. And with the space opening up in Evanston, we thought, why not try to build the most resilient food system possible? Soon it was ready, and the farmers showed up with all their amazing goodies. And we figured, why not invite more farmers? And that's how it all started.
We can build a much stronger community by building a more caring passionate, vibrant local food system.
All right, so that's the story in a nutshell. And what really has compelled me, really since meeting Marty and since filming so much in Central Illinois is, you know, I did all this research for that film, and I realized that 25% of the population of the United States in the 1930s was involved in farming, and less than 2% now of the population is actually involved in farming. And when you go out to areas where Marty and these other farmers are, they're just surrounded by 1,000-acre, 2,000-acre farms. And these are farms that are contributing to a commodity market of corn and soybeans. And when you take all these small plots in these rural areas and you start combining them all together, and every farmer is farming 1,000 or 2,000 acres, suddenly the main street in all these small towns just disappears. So these local economies go away, funding for the schools goes away, funding for the hospitals goes away, and you just start to see a dwindling population. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal in 2017 that said that rural America is the new inner city in terms of the largest population group for poverty statistics. And so I look at the need to connect city people with rural people. And the way we can do that is by supporting a local food system. And by supporting that system, we can help to rebuild the main streets of all these small towns. So Marty's in Fairbury, Illinois. He was working with 25 farms when we first started talking in 2013, and he now works with over 70 farms in that area. We continue to see more and more farms contribute to this rural economy that's growing down there. We have grains, organic grains that didn't exist 10 years ago that are coming into this city now. And so we're starting to build a regional food culture that in some ways is similar to the food culture that exists on the East Coast or the West Coast. And I think that's only going to continue to grow, but it does require all of us as consumers to be a part of it. So I don't know what time it is, but that's about all I have.
Beth, do you want me to read some of these questions or?
Yes, I didn't. Last time I checked, I didn't. Okay, yeah. So go ahead and read the first one, Enid.
So just there's a question about how the farmers that you had in your initial film, like how they're faring today. And I think I kind of want to tag onto that question. It's like, how they're doing today, and then the friendships that you've fostered with these farmers, because I think that's a really beautiful part of the story.
I think one of the interesting parts of the farmer part of it in terms of Central Illinois is that most of these farmers are not full-time farmers. Most of these farmers started growing on their properties. Maybe they live on 2 acres or they live on 5 acres, and they were friends with Marty, and Marty would tell them, hey, you know, put in some rhubarb or grow some tomatoes, and we'll pool all of our resources together, and you can earn a kind of some side money, and then maybe you can quit your job at the mill, or you can quit your job at the local factory where they work, and then you can start farming full time. That's really something that many of these farmers in this area are interested in doing. But the thing is, they need enough business. You know, you don't make a lot of money as a farmer, so you need to grow a lot of crops in order to do that. So if anyone noticed in that video, there was actually a 15-year-old boy who was working land. Well, that's the third son of this family that lives about 20 minutes away from Marty, that has continuously made $20,000 a year selling tomatoes to Frontera and to other restaurants in the city. And you know, so it's provided income for kids to go to college and to do more. And so I was fortunate enough to go to a lot of the meetings of what they're called the Stewards of the Land is a group that Marty started that became this kind of group of farmers that was farming part-time, and I got to be pretty good friends with a lot of them, and I love seeing them, and obviously they love having their products at Village Farmstand. So I think allowing them to have a retail outlet that works the same way that the restaurant wholesale business works has really provided a lot of them an opportunity to not farm part-time, but to farm full-time. And so we are hoping to continue that.
Yeah, there's another question that kind of goes well with that one. What do you say to people who say they can spend less going to the local supermarket? Because I think that's a lot about the community that you're building, and
For sure.
more about, it's more than dollars and cents. It's like supporting.
If the equity supply chain of where your food comes from is of no concern to you, and if the nutrient density of the food you eat is no concern to you, then by all means go to a grocery store and get your food. And if transparency is not of a concern to you, then go get your cheap food. But cheap food has a price. Most food out there involves exploitation of labor. It involves exploitation of land. And we're trying to build a supply chain that has zero exploitation. We have less than 1% food waste with the supply chain that we currently have. And all of our farmers are paid a living wage. That's important. And that's part of, for me, that's part of supporting rural American. And I always tell people, if you're paying by the nutrient, you're getting a bargain with shopping at Village Farmstand. So
then also a question about the overhead, your overhead that, I'll just read it as is. What is the overhead tacked onto a farmer's products for Village Farmstand versus a regular grocery store?
We take a 33% margin on basically all products. So farmers are getting 60% on the dollar. It's a similar margin as what most grocery stores are taking. But the difference is that most grocery stores will have 2 to 3 links in the supply chain between the farmer and us. So, if we're going to price something at $3, the farmer is getting $2. Maybe the farmer is getting $1.90, right? In the worst case scenario, but they're getting 60% of the dollar, which is a lot more reflective of how grocery supply chains used to be in the 50s and 60s. And that changed a lot when consolidation happened amongst grocery, and consolidation happened amongst processors for animals, and happened amongst the companies that provide the groceries.
There's a question here also about like organic versus conventionally grown products in your store.
Yeah, so organic is basically our minimum. Although the small farms that are 2 to 5 acres in size, they don't have the means to have a certification. So we do have a number of products that don't have any sort of certification to them. And we do carry some of our fruit products are lower than organic. They're called integrated pest management, which is a system that basically it's very popular in Michigan. I'm not altogether 100% happy with it, and I would love to find organic, or I think there's better alternatives than organic in terms of fruit, because fruit trees or fruit vines it's a perennial crop, and anytime you're growing something that's a perennial, you can look at doing more of a permaculture style farm. And so there are permaculture style farms that are doing this on the coasts. We don't really have access to that product, but we are actually, Spence Farm is put in about 400 fruit trees so in about 3-4 years, we'll have great fruit options from a farm that is using permaculture practice. Until then, I think we'll get by with a combination of integrated pest management and organic. But in terms of the produce that we do, that's outside some of the fruits, our minimum standard is organic.
And how about, here's someone wondering how involved you are in policy making to kind of back up the beliefs, right? So how involved are you in policy? I mean, you understand the question, I guess.
Yeah, I like to Jewish guilt policymakers into making the right decisions about food, and I try to do that through my films. But I do foresee myself getting more involved in policy as I've gained a lot of knowledge. I'm currently working on a film about the history of the meat and poultry industries, and it's not meant to really condemn what the industry is doing as a whole. It's just meant to provide a way of looking back at what's been done and what we can do in the future. And it will suggest policy at some level, not exact policy, but it will imply policy changes, that's for sure. And so I hope that film is successful. Hopefully it'll come out spring next year. And I'll probably be more involved in policy in the future.
Yeah. The farmers that come to Village Farmstand, are they also at like surrounding farmers markets, or they're doing mostly the restaurants and Village Farmstand?
Most of the farmers, they do farmers markets in Bloomington, Peoria, Champaign. So they're doing more local farmers markets to them. There's a couple, like we get a lot of product from Gray Farms, and Gray Farms used to be at the Andersonville Farmers Market. And then all of our Michigan farms, they're all doing farmers markets, tons of farmers markets. So McClug and Ellis, Frillman Farms, they're all doing farmers markets. And then we also do work with a handful of Wisconsin and I guess upper Illinois farms, like Jacobson, who is at the Green City Market, and River Valley. You'll find it, nearly every market, every big market. So we're getting mushrooms from them. So a lot of them, the thing is that most farmers who do farmers markets, they're not going to make a living, a full-time living at farmers market. They have to supplement their income with other areas. And so they diversify by doing some wholesale and doing some farmers markets. And that allows them to earn a full living as a farmer.
Enid, you look for the next question. Can I ask, this is Beth Drucker, can I ask Matt a question? I'm sure a lot of your shoppers are eating a plant-based diet or, trying to shift a little bit to that. But for those of us who do eat meat, can you tell us a little bit about the meat products that you sell and why it makes sense to buy meat products from you as opposed to our local grocery store?
It's a great question.
That's a very good question. And this obviously gets into the topic of my next film, which is this is a huge part of that. I met this great farmer. His name is Reginaldo up in Minnesota. He's originally from Guatemala, and he came to the United States to try to change the food system. And he looked at his work as a farmer as a steward of energy transformation, and that energy going from photosynthesis to a plant, and then from a plant to an animal, through the animal's intestines to the soil, and then back again. And that continuous cycle of energy involves an animal in the middle of it to create that continuous cycle. And so there are ways to utilize animals within a indigenous type of growing system, one that involves agroecology practices in a way that benefits the land and allows farmers to remove themselves from annual crop growth and start going towards perennial crop growth. And when they do that, they can sequester a lot of carbon. In the Midwest, in the heartland of the United States, we used to have somewhere between 30 and 60 million bison. And those bison would forage on perennial grasses. Those grasses have all been removed and replaced with annual crops. Those annual crops do not have long enough root systems to make it down to the aquifers that are underneath, which means that you have to irrigate them. So that cycle can be fixed using an ecosystem-based solution that involves an animal. And so for Village Farmstand, we focus specifically only on animal animal husbandry that is minimally pasture raised. So all the providers we work with are using that, are doing pasture raised, whether it's chicken, whether it's hogs, or whether it's beef. We have some lamb. I will say processing is a huge issue for small farms, and I'll probably get fairly involved in policy stuff in terms of processing, because that is a real bottleneck. You know, when Tyson can process a chicken for 50 cents a chicken, but you know, the farmers that I work with, it costs them $3 to $4 per chicken. That's a huge barrier to the price point to a consumer. So that's a whole nother part of the conversation.
There's a question here that I think you've sort of answered, but I don't know, I might ask if I could say something about it just from working with you. It says, what about people who can't afford to pay more for the produce, even if they want to? And I think you kind of addressed that in like the hidden cost of labor and poor food systems. But I don't know. I also think about like the things that you eat the most, like prioritizing what you eat the most and like buying the best of it that you can. Like I always tell people at Village Farmstand, we sell so many eggs and they're so good. And like, if you're going to buy eggs, buy the best that you can, like that kind of thought.
I mean, definitely we all seek, our brains and our bodies seeks nutrition. And I think when we eat a lot of food that's fill and it's not nutritious, but it fills us. It just doesn't provide the nutrition we want. I had a customer say to me a couple weeks ago that he spends basically the same amount of money he used to spend, but he just makes sure he doesn't waste anything. And so, you know, shopping at Village Farmstand and paying a little bit more for his groceries has provided a reason for him to make sure he's not wasting anything. And I think there's value in that. I do want to create a way to create a food avenue for those who can't afford what we're doing. And there is grant money right out from the USDA right now. And we were hoping to write a grant that would allow us to feed the food insecure population of Evanston. So that's still on the radar of something that's on my, my grocery bucket list of something I want to do. And so I do hope we're able to expand into that. And I hope the city of Evanston is able to join us in that.
I don't know if you want to mention, like, since we're talking about food and community, like the donation that you've done. I think that's like a really beautiful.
Yeah, we've donated over 500 dozen eggs from our farmers. Basically, when things shut down a little bit in January of this year, the restaurants stopped buying from Marty and his farmers again. And that meant that there was a huge glut in the amount of eggs that Marty had. And so he put out an email to all of his chefs and to everyone that, hey, he needs people to buy eggs. So it gave me an idea to create a donation program where we offer eggs at cost for our customers to then go into the community fridges in Evanston. So that's been great. And that's one way we're getting back. And in the past, we've worked with organizations like Family Focused to donate farm boxes. But I really want to put together a more robust program utilizing USDA grant funds that feeds food insecure families in Evanston. So I do think there's an opportunity for that in the future.
Can I break in and ask another question, Matt? This is such a phenomenal model. Did you make this up or did you model it after other successful models like this?
I made it up based on what the farmers' needs were. Chicago has become a hotspot for wholesaling grocery, vegetables, local produce to restaurants. And if you're driving around the city in Chicago on a Wednesday, you're going to see all the farm trucks. They all deliver on the same day. And I thought, well, there's an opportunity there to basically receive all this product on a Wednesday. Some of it's received on a Thursday morning, and then to really sell through the weekend. And that way we're only going to buy what we think we're going to sell. So we're not going to waste a lot of food. And I'll say, yeah, I mean, I think we've done a good job creating an interesting model. I will say, being an entrepreneur, and it's a small business and it's a grind, and, you know, we'll be making some changes. I'm happy to talk about all that stuff too. But there's the grocery industry is a cutthroat industry, and Whole Foods and others will utilize all the same language that we utilize to try to get people in the door and convince their customers that they're doing the same thing we're doing. So it gets throat out there, and you know, they have big wallets to fund losses. This is the ebb and flow of the consolidation of food industries over the past 30, 40 years and how they've done business. So we'll be making some changes over the course of this year and next, and I think they'll be better, and they'll better serve the community. So yeah.
I actually wonder if that's a good segue to Jillian, just talking about how the deep pockets of the big groceries and the grind, and maybe how community supported grocery is a good way to go from there. So maybe, Beth, what do you think? Is it a good time to transition and hear from Jillian's side of the topic?
Yeah, you know, we could talk about Matt's amazing operation for hours. But yes, why don't we segue to Wild Onion Market, and then we're going to have another Q&A. And if people still have questions for Matt, we can bring him into the second Q&A after our presentation by the Wild Onion Market.
Great. So our next speaker is Jillian Jason, who I'm finally meeting. Seeing her face over, I've just been communicating with her via email. So it's nice to meet you and welcome. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Enid. And thanks everybody for being here. I'm sure Matt's such a good presenter and an amazing entrepreneur. And I'm really here just representing a large group of community members who are trying to volunteer their time to do something a little bit similar, right? Like we're all trying to fight the food giants and bring ourselves and our communities better options and better nutrition and better access. So anyway, I'll go ahead and share my screen here, tell you guys a little bit about the project that I'm working on, and let me know, somebody on the line, if you can't see my screen, but hopefully you can. I'm told this Zoom bar goes away eventually. All right. So first of all, you're probably wondering how I got here. I'm from the East Coast originally, grew up in Pennsylvania, went to college in New England and spent time in New Hampshire. Out of school, ended up apprenticing on a small farm in York, Maine. I had an interest. I really wanted to learn about the world of farming. It was a farm that supplied a farmer's market. So I definitely got a taste of the grind, the entrepreneurship, and that was just one day a week. So it's really tough for farmers. You know, farmers markets are rain or shine, and you're out there, you know, in a really tight window. If it's bad weather, you might not get customers, things like that. Although it was amazing to learn how food is produced and grown and throughout the growing season. From there, I moved to Manhattan. I wanted to move to New York and get a different experience. I really had never lived in a big city before. I very quickly, at that time, there was a big outgrowth of small food producers, mostly around Brooklyn, but some in New York. I ended up working for a small chocolate company that was a farmer's market only brand, and they had a dream of scaling into, at that time, Whole Foods had not yet been bought by Amazon, and they were still pretty regional. So they thought, hey, if we could get Whole Foods and really scale this thing. And that turned out to be a really hard process. Selling into the distribution system of food in the United States is incredibly crushing for small brands. They take huge margins. As Matt kind of covered the consolidation of food distribution in the last 30 years. Basically, two big companies bought up every tiny food distributor and crushed the little guys who wanted to supply them. But it was an eye-opening experience. It's possible to kind of get on those distribution systems. It's kind of possible to work with other independent stores. And that's when I really figured out that, hey, there's a network of retailers out there who are doing something really awesome for the small producer. And they're people who have started independent businesses and they're running grocery stores, kind of old school mom and pop shop grocery stores. So from there, I found one of those grocery stores. They were operating in Manhattan and Brooklyn, 2 locations, and they had just bought a small farm and wanted to run a distribution network out of the Hudson Valley in New York. Seems easy, right? So I took on that project, managed a small team on a farm, and paid my way there by running distribution of Hudson Valley products down to the city. A lot of distribution into high-end restaurants really helped pay the bills, and supplying our small grocery store. At this point, the co-op is about to be 6,000 square feet total. I think the stores I was working in Manhattan were around 2,000 square feet. So a lot packed into a little. And we would run twice a week down to the city with all those products from upstate, as well as farm produce. And it was definitely a grind. The growing season is intense, days are long, but it was a super rewarding experience and something that I really took with me. From there, I worked in the stores. I wanted to learn how grocery worked in those grocery stores. Made the move to Chicago, where I continued working in sales and marketing for startup food brands. So that was a little bit bigger brands, and really kind of getting into the machine of the Whole Foods and the Marianos of the world, which I'm happy to talk more about how those systems work, and kind of the way or at least from the ground's eye view that I had, kind of disturbing ways that food ends up on our grocery store shelves in the big chains. And eventually left that line of work. And now I've been working on the co-op. I found the co-op as a group of volunteers, around 200 people organizing to start something when I moved to Rogers Park in 2018. And since have become really involved. I've been leading the board now for the last 4 years. And I'm here to talk about the project and why it's so meaningful to me, and also how you can get involved and hopefully find meaning in it for you. So first of all, what is a food co-op? Consumer food co-ops operate a lot like independent grocery stores. The only difference is that they're owned by their community rather than like a sole proprietor. We know of consumer food co-ops in 38 US states, and almost all of them have a model where they're open for anybody to shop in the whole community. You could walk in and shop. A lot of them accept SNAP benefits or other community benefits. It really operates like a grocery store. I think there's a misconception out there of kind of the buyers clubs, church basement with folks dividing up bulk products. While that model exists, and there's some worker-owned co-ops where only folks who are owners put in hours and work and stock the shelves themselves, most co-ops aren't like that. Most co-ops are communities just like ours, with folks buying shares in the business and then working really, really hard in the startup phase to open up a grocery store that eventually will be run by a general manager and employ local people here on the north side, and really function like an independent market. So, what does our particular co-op stand for? So our mission that we talk about publicly is to cultivate a thriving community-owned grocery store that connects people to fresh local food and to each other. So we have really strong values around community. We, if we're asking all of these folks to join in and to be part of this and to own a piece of Wild Onion Market, we certainly want to provide value and provide a community resource, that in the sense that there's a welcoming, safe space, there's an accessibility to food, and there's a place to meet people and who share similar values and share food together. We're going to have a small cafe space, as well as just providing that neighborhood connection. So much of my passion really is around what we've lost, as Matt touched on, with kind of the loss of Main Street, and even in the city, a de-investment away from our local communities and into corporate chains. We've lost a lot of the places where we go and meet neighbors and have those local connections and that really meaningful piece of community life. The food that we sell, the core of our business, we're really focused on local and sustainable. While we won't be as hyper local and focused on that as Matt is, because we are going to be a full service grocery store, which means unfortunately in some ways, but also fortunately, as far as being able to create dinner, we will have to work with some of the distributors. We will have a center aisle, of shelf stable food, and we can pull the lever in some of those choices in a different way. But overall, we will continuously push to get more local producers who have higher standards for their produce, who are closer to home, and who are able to really extend out into the local food shed to provide a retail outlet for those people. So we focus a lot on that resilient local food system. Frankly, it keeps dollars in our community. For every dollar spent locally, it kind of goes around the community 3 times, they say. Whereas if you spend your money at Whole Foods, it definitely goes right back to Amazon, which is not headquartered in Illinois, and the folks who work there at a corporate level aren't reinvesting those dollars in our community. We also focus a lot on environmental stewardship, anywhere from supply chain issues and talking about the food we buy and the farmers we buy it from to waste disposal. One of the downsides or the dark secrets of corporate grocery chains is that there's a ton of plastic waste. There's a lot of food waste. It's like, like we were talking about here, it's easy to justify those losses and really not think about it. So with a small independent store that is right here in our community, we have the option to take advantage of community composting programs. We have choices we can make around providing bulk options. And we have purchasing decisions around anything from something that reduces plastic packaging to something that refuses it altogether. So that's really at the core of what we're building here. This is a really brief timeline. I'll spare you reading all the way through it, but suffice it to say the co-op began organizing in 2014. A group of neighbors in someone's living room, really classic grassroots project, decided, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we started a food co-op? We don't know anything about that. We're going to go try to find out how to do that and try to get some owners. Late in 2014, we actually had made enough money, or the project at that time had made enough money to start selling their very first shares. We elected our first board in 2015, and they set about learning how co-ops are built. This is an entirely volunteer-powered project. So right now we have just over 1,250 owners. We have a board of 9 individuals who volunteer anywhere between, I think, 15 and probably some folks are volunteering 40 hours a week on the board to get this thing open. So, we're creating community power here. The dedication and the folks who want to get the co-op open over the years has been absolutely extraordinary. And the community members who've given their money to a dream without anything yet to shop at or show for it is really, really extraordinary. Organizing in your community takes an incredible amount of power, and folks who have knocked on doors or talked to people at farmers markets have made amazing connections. And we've really started to see momentum taking off around 2019, 2020. When we shut down for the pandemic as a community, we really saw folks start to think a lot about their supply chain issues, the food system in general, and really want change and really want to push for change. We kind of saw the floodgates open there. And so we had really explosive site owner growth. We kind of measure our progress in owners. We want as much impact and reach as possible. Our owners also eventually will right now actually run a capital campaign, and the way that works is there's a strong community investment component. So more owners means more folks who are willing to fund this project and get it open. So we had a site search, and I'm happy to report in January 25th, 2022, we signed a lease on 7007 North Clark Street. It's right in that Clark Street corridor in Rogers Park. A really nice story for revitalizing what was once a really vibrant commercial street and is coming back. And we're capital fundraising right now. So we're in crunch time. We are working really hard to get those doors open. This is a little snapshot of where we stand. A lot of owners, about 10% of those owners at any given time coming in are local businesses. So we have a really strong local business community from Evanston and Rogers Park and all over Chicago, really all over the north side. Businesses have really seen the value of becoming co-op owners and being able to both have an outlet for things when the store is open, but also connect with other businesses, really amplify that local community. I think we all realize we're stronger together, and together we can really support each other and resist the corporatization of our communities. We also award scholarships. So need-based scholarships, the only requirement is to tell us why you want to be a co-op owner and just a little bit about you and your relationship to community and food. We don't ask about folks' financial situation, but when we have the funds, which are generously provided by mostly donations from folks in the community, we are able to cut the ownership share more than in half for people. And we're able to offer your ownership payments for as little as $10 a month. So that's just a way that we want to be able to include everybody in this project. We want to make sure that we have as much access as possible to being part of this community. So building a grocery store, this is where the rubber really meets the road. We're in it now. We signed our lease. The great thing about our site is we're actually revitalizing a grocery store that has gone out of business. It's been vacant for about 3 years, and it's absolutely filled with completely usable equipment that just needs to be refurbished a little bit. When we went around and turned everything on, everything turns on, it works. The sort of tragedy of sites like that is often the stuff in there is single use for folks. You know, if we had a developer come in, they wanted a brand new retail footprint, all of those coolers and freezers and shelves would go in the trash. So we're able to reuse a ton of equipment. We're able to resell and donate equipment to others in the community who can use it. And we're able to drastically reduce our opening cost. So we're running that capital fundraising campaign, looking to raise $1 million from our community, and we're almost halfway there. Typically, co-ops are raising anywhere between $6 and $8 million to open because they're starting from scratch. They don't have the luxury of having a store that's just filled with equipment and is basically ready to go. So right now we're working through our city permitting and all of those really fun things with our architect. We're working on plans. We almost have our floor plan finalized. We have some things to upgrade and modernize for sure. We're hoping to start demolition in July and then construction in August. And we really hope to open our store by the end of the year. Of course, opening that store is dependent, as most things, on our fundraising efforts. So we really need, we always need owners to step up and join in this effort. For one time, $250, you own a share forever. Founding owner here of Wild Onion Market. And after you become an owner, you have the opportunity to make an additional capital investment in the store. It's really the only opportunity that I've ever felt where I had a direct impact and I could invest directly and align with my values. So for me, making that investment as an owner was really a no-brainer. I think if we have the opportunity and the access, we should really use it to help others and to really build this resource. So pending our fundraising campaign, we'll get that store open. And I just wanted to share some stuff with you guys about why it's really important. So a lot of stats here, a couple that I really like to show. You know, as far as food co-ops go, and really this goes for a lot of independent grocers, about 22% of products on the shelves are local, which is an astronomical number compared to conventional grocery store. Some stores are as little as 2 to 7% of local products. Some stores have absolutely no local program. They just have a headquarters somewhere in the US, they plop a store down in a community, and they buy absolutely nothing from local farmers or local producers, which is extremely extractive to communities. None of that money and that opportunity comes back into the community. So as far as that 22%, could it be better? Could it, you know, that's 100%. Yeah, we could definitely do better, but we have to start somewhere. And we really want to build something that is able to build upon a strong food shed and a strong local community to start to amplify and to start to overtake, you know, a narrative that's emerged over the last 30 years that really is a corporatization of our food system here. On top of that, an average food co-op works with 185 local farmers and producers. This means a lot more work for the food co-op. It's a lot easier for if you work in a national chain to just open up a distribution catalog and circle what you want. This represents a commitment to a local food shed and to really making sure that the folks who are here in Illinois, who are producing things, you know, in Chicago, who are making jams and jellies or pickles or baking bread, making sure that they have a retail outlet and that there's a strong place for that to go for them. Obviously, jobs that will come to our community as a result of the food co-op, dollars that we spend here will stay local. And food co-ops are, of course, always committed to donating food waste as well as profits back into their communities. As we stack up against conventional grocery, you can see local products, you know, different sources, different stats, but right around that 20% number. Conventional grocery across the US just hovering around 6% as their average. Revenue that we are able to spend on local wages and benefits. This is huge considering food co-ops are kind of on their own, right? With benefit packages and making sure employees are taken care of. There's a real care out there to make sure that the folks who we employ locally, who are from our communities, are not working minimum wage jobs with no access to benefits and basic living wages. We're able to put revenue back into our economy. And yeah, I'm trying to see what the bottom one is here. But as you can see, our cooperative model means that we can put a lot more care and a lot more attention and focus on both our farmers as well as the people who live and shop here on the North Shore. So in conclusion here, we're organizing for change. We want, we know that this doesn't stop with us. It's a whole system. We want to change our economy. We want to change the food supply chain. We want to lessen our environmental impact. We want to make sure we welcome everybody and we're bringing everyone along to that access. And essentially we want to change the way that we do business and the way we think about a successful business. And I guess I'll leave everybody with this, but the idea that takes time and effort and individuals to step up, and that takes investment, capital investment and investment here in our community. So after tonight, the number one thing I would encourage you to do is support your local independent grocers, shop locally, go to farmers markets, go to grocery stores that aren't chains, buy from local producers wherever possible. And if you enjoyed me, definitely go to wildonionmarket.com. You can learn more. You can join online. It's really easy. You can, if that's too much tonight, you can definitely follow along and support us on social media. When you do become an owner, you can make one of those owner-only investments. And if you're not an owner, you can always make a tax-deductible donation. I would be so honored and happy if folks joined in, and you would be joining a wonderful community. We really are organizing for change here, and we're going to make it happen. So that's all I have for you. There's my contact information. Feel free to call me, email me, text me. And with that, I'll move it over to Q&A.
Thanks, Jillian. I actually have a question. I'm not clear on like why a business would become a owner. Like, what is the benefit of a business becoming an owner?
Yeah, so I originally had thought, hey, probably just food businesses will become owners, right? They're thinking, I produce something and I want to one day sell it at the co-op, and maybe it'll get me a leg into the store. And what we found when we started, asking folks if they wanted to join as a business, what we found was, especially throughout South Evanston, this incredibly tight-knit community of business owners that just really wanted to move together through the local economy and really wanted to join in something and so in some ways have that signifier of, hey, we're part of something different. We're all local independent owners together, and we're going through this thing. We're supporting our community. We're really doing the hard work. And so the support of the co-op in some ways is just support of another local institution, but we can all amplify together. So I see it as a way for the co-op to give back to those businesses. We've done a lot of social media takeovers and really shine a light on a lot of those folks. Matt's business included. He'll regularly donate things for co-op raffles. I think some owners have won a trip to Village Farmstand, which I'm very jealous. But it's just a great way to spread the word across the community about our shared values.
And then I had another thing I wonder if you could comment on about how there is room for Wild Onion and farmers markets and Village Farmstand. Like, there is room for all of those things to coexist, and it's not like competition, but it's like working together. I don't know if you can comment on that.
Oh yeah, we get this question all the time. And frankly, I was pretty interested too. As a consumer, I thought, well, I buy my meat here, and if I don't buy it there, I'm going to buy it somewhere else. And what's that going to do? And one of the pieces of co-op organizing is you get a market study done. So you hire a professional who comes to the community and is able to not just look at your site and determine if it's a good site and what your sales projections might be, which is a great reason why most co-ops that open in the last 10 years are still in business. They really do their due diligence. If we're going to ask our community members to step up with their money, we're going to definitely make sure that we have our best chance at survival. But as part of doing that market study process, we're able to say, hey, what does the market look like? And how big of a share of it do we have, or are we able to capture? And when that analyst came to our community in particular, and our site's located in Rogers Park, but they said, oh my gosh, currently locals here, you guys and Village Farmstand and Morse Market and all those folks are capturing somewhere between 3 and 5% of the market. Everybody else is going out and they're ordering groceries online. They're doing Amazon delivery. They're going to Whole Foods. They're driving to a different community. They're going to Jewel. So that's an incredible piece of that pie that I think that just by the numbers, we can all certainly share. And part of that's educational too, right? We want to expand our consumer base, expand our access. And Matt's really great at this, making sure people understand the value of shopping at a store like that and understand the nutrient story, understanding how it supports local farmers and local producers too. So yeah, we're a lot more extractive here than I would have thought before that. But it was very eye-opening for me.
Right. And can you just reiterate the location?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, we are 7007 North Clark Street, which is at the corner of Lunt and Clark. It's in a little shopping mall. So we have a local landlord. He's down in the Ravenswood area, and he's just thrilled that his grocery store is going to be used for its intended purpose.
That's great. And then, yeah, I don't know if we have any other questions. It's certainly open for more questions. Beth, did you want to add anything? Is she there? I think we lost Beth. And then Matt, if you want to talk about the location of Village Farmstand too, I don't know if we talked about where it actually is.
The Farmstand is at 810 Dempster Street, which is on Dempster and Evanston between Ridge and Chicago. And it's, if you were watching in the video, it's the old location of Hune Bakery, which at this point has been out of that location for 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, so sorry, I was on mute, but
Okay.
so Jillian, when was the last time there was a food co-op like yours in this area?
Oh gosh, I've only been in the community for the past 5 years. So I've heard stories of old co-ops, natural food stores. I believe there was a co-op in Uptown a long time ago. We don't yet have a strong cooperative community in Chicago, although we're building one. If you loved what you heard tonight and you want to go out and support more, our friends in Oak Park operate the Sugar Beet Food Co-op. And that's a store very similar to ours in size and kind of ethos. And then we have one called the Dill Pickle in the Logan Square neighborhood. I'm also an owner there. And really exciting, the Chicago market is organizing to open their store at the Wilson L stop in that historic kind of pie-shaped building. So they're getting very, very close. They've hired a general manager, and I believe their weekly farmers market is coming back this year. So we're building our cooperative community slowly but surely here.
Great. I think I did a little Google Maps thing. I think it'd be about a 15-minute drive from Wilmette, which, for a lot of us, we're kind of weighing, that extra driving time and fuel use. But to support this model, which really helps provide a sustainable solution for the farmers, for your employees, is really important. So I was delighted when I heard about the Wild Onion Market. And I wish you all the best. I just think it's going to be really, really exciting. So if there are no other questions, I had asked Enid if she would share with us some insights she has, because she has worked at the Wilmette Farmers Market. And so she's pretty familiar with ways that you could find out more about how the farmers in the market actually grow the food. Enid, can you give us some tips?
Yeah, sure. This was not planned for me. I would say the question that kind of rings in my head all the time is, or the comment, I'm often surprised at who I don't see at the market. Like when I started working the market, I thought, oh, I live in Wilmette. I work the Wilmette Farmers Market. I'm going to see everyone I know every Saturday. And I don't. And I've often asked people like why they don't go to the market. And something that I've heard is that, well, how do you know if it's really coming from the farm? Like I don't think people trust the market all that much. And I think there's very good reasons for that. But I think that talking to farmers and getting to know the growing seasons and just educating yourself on what is in season makes the farmers market so much more obvious in a way. So like I was talking to Matt about this last week, but if you're shopping at the farmers market and the booth you're shopping from is selling strawberries in April, they're probably not the farmers. I mean, you just have to, it's an interesting lesson in just like kind of opening your eyes and seeing like, what is this person selling? Did they make it? Talk to that person and build a relationship with the people you're buying food from. And I really enjoy the farmers that I work for, and I know they grow it all. And I've learned a lot about the growing season from them and what's in and what's coming next. And it's actually really fun. And it's this whole cycle that you kind of get in tune with. And I think that's the easiest way to know if your farmer is really your farmer.
So some of us struggle with the fact that there are not more organic farmers at the market. And yet the organic food that we're buying at Whole Foods is coming through the Amazon system, and it may be shipped from California.
Yeah,
So,
this is something that for me, like, I struggle with that. Like, would you rather buy, I mean, you can have it both ways. You can find organic food at the market, but it's also like that, making that choice of like, okay, am I going to support this local economy and this local farmer, or am I going to buy something that's organic but came from far away and is bought at a huge grocery store? And I just think it's something that you have to choose what is more important to you.
yeah. Matt,
A lot of it also comes with, and I don't know, maybe Matt, you have something to say about this, but a lot of it also comes with like certified organic versus like.
I'd love to add to that.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, 2/3 to 3/4 of the organic produce that you'll find in a grocery store or through Amazon or whatever is not grown in California. It's not grown in the United States. And it's organic based on affidavits. There is no third party checking. The FDA does not do any sort of checking. The USDA does not do any sort of checking. So it's all based on affidavits from the farms saying the practices that they're using. So I think there's very little transparency in the organic certification unless it's coming from a farm that you know.
Right. And yeah, and maybe, I don't know, I get really in my head with this topic, but I don't know, for me, it feels really good to talk to the farmer. They can tell you how they grew it. You're buying it from them. And like I said, when I was introducing the program, you can say you're cutting out a lot of transportation and plastic packaging. And for me, that feels better than going to a big grocery store and saying, oh, this says USDA certified organic, and buying it that way. But.
And Matt, you alluded to this, but why would some farmers who are essentially growing with organic practices not go through the certification process to be able to put that label on their food?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of farmers that are so against the organic certification. At the same time, they'll never touch a pesticide or a fungicide at any level. They're just seeing so much fraud within the use of the organic certification, and they're standing for something that is much more along the lines of regenerative agriculture, where you're focusing on plant health and soil health. They're doing organic practices, but they're banking on the discussion with their customer base for understanding that. We are trying to get more of our farmers certified so that we can put that at Village Farmstand, because they are all abiding by organic practices. In fact, they're also signing affidavits saying that they're not doing any sort of spraying when they sign to distribute with Marty's group. So
yeah,
a lot of paperwork for a small farm, though. Jillian has something to say, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off, Matt, but yeah, I'd love to add, just as from the experience of working on these small farms and working at farmers markets with these people, I think that I fully support everything that's been said about the cost and the barrier to entry of the organic certification, and folks really being against the way that the system has been used. I think from working at a farmer's market, none of these people are in the farmer's market game to get rich. It's incredibly grinding. So I think when you talk to your local farmer and they seem like a genuine person, and they've been up probably since 3, earlier in the morning, and they had gone to bed that night incredibly late. It's a grind, and they're there rain or shine. And in some ways that feels like the thing in the community that I trust the most. We live in an era, and I understand that, of mistrust, because we've been lied to a lot. But I think if there's anybody I'm going to trust, it's probably that person I'm standing in front of on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, rather than what a big corporation with thousands of millions of dollars of marketing spend behind it is going to tell me.
There's one question in the chat saying, so if an item has the USDA certification for organic, that doesn't mean they are truly organic. Is that true, Matt?
Yeah, it just means they've signed an affidavit that says they're abiding by organic standards and they're reporting what chemicals they are using, as that's part of it. But there is no actual testing. There's nobody taking samples of the products to see what compounds are there or are not there. That's not true. It's the same for actually meats too. Antibiotic free label, there's no testing for antibiotic free. There's no testing for hormone free. All that's affidavit based.
Interesting. It seems like a kind of downer note to end on. Do we want to end on something like more positive? Something more uplifting? Anyone?
Yeah, I wondered whether you had a couple of tips that people could take away, and also whether any of you, the three of you, have a book or a movie that you think someone would find really, really interesting if they're into this topic. And then Enid will, after those recommendations, we'll have you wrap up and conclude.
Yeah, well, of course, I have seen Matt's film Sustainable, highly recommend.
Okay.
Well, I guess what I would say is we're behind here in the Midwest. We're very behind. What's going on the East Coast and the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, is way farther in terms of the amount of co-ops, the amount of local produce that's going to those grocery stores. And so we have a lot of work to do. And at the same time, we have the best soil on earth right here in our fingertips, right in Illinois. We have this, 40 million years ago, this was a giant sea that deposited an incredible amount of rich topsoil. We have, 20 feet of topsoil in some areas, where you go to the Piedmont area of the Carolinas and they have a foot of topsoil. You can even just go up to areas of Wisconsin where they'll have 6 inches to 18 inches of topsoil. They just don't have a lot to work with. And so there is a lot that we can do. We became this corn belt as a way to feed cattle. We don't need to do that anymore. We can get rid of that. So it's another reason to buy meats from somebody you know. I guess if I was gonna suggest books, or John, if you want to be a nerd like me about gardening and growing, listen to some of John Kemp's podcasts. He has podcasts about agroecology growing. John Kemp with an F at the end. And in terms of books, someone just suggested Dirt, which is a very good book. If you're looking for a book that is not necessarily agriculture based, I think Sapiens is a really eye-opening book to understanding the impact that humans have had on ecosystems, and to understand potentially how we can change our lives and better understand agriculture and our place within it.
Someone asked where they can view your film, Matt. I think I just watched it I think I bought it on YouTube.
I think you can get it on Google or Amazon or other, sustainablefoodfilm.com. You can find more opportunities. It used to be on Netflix. I wish it was still there, but it's not. But hopefully the next film will be there. So,
Jillian, any favorites?
Well, first of all, Matt's modest. I would have shouted out another project I think that you helped work on or you helped produce called Last Man Fishing. I love that film. That's a great film. So that's, I don't know what your involvement was, Matt, but I would definitely recommend that. As far as the food co-op grocery side of things, there's a book called Grocery Story by John Steinman. And it really kind of breaks down the way that food co-ops are different and the way that, grocery stores have consolidated into giant chains with one distributor for all of our food. So that's a good one. And I guess I don't have any, all my other podcast recommendations are true crime. So I don't have you there.
Jillian, what was the name of that book? I didn't catch it.
It's called Grocery Story by John Steinman.
Okay.
Great.
Great.
I think we should wrap it up there for time. Thank you both so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. Beth, any last words?
My dog has brought out the squeaky toy. No, I'm going back on mute. Anyway, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. We'll be posting this to our YouTube channel tomorrow. If you have not checked out the Village Farm Stand, please go. Can you just walk in, or do you order ahead, Matt?
You can do both. Yeah, you can walk in. And maybe Enid will be there to help you.
Okay, great. And
Wonderful.
And Jillian, a friend has said, I think I've just decided not to eat anymore. Reminds me of the first time I read The Omnivore's Dilemma. You just think, oh my gosh, there are no easy solutions. No easy solutions, but thank you for bringing great opportunity to us, all three of you. Enid, with your work at the farmers markets and Village Farm Stand. Matt, it's an amazing model, and I would love to see it replicated in every city. That would be amazing. Jillian, I can't wait for the co-op to open. Let's hope you get enough investors to open those doors in 2022. So Enid, thank you very much for creating this webinar. And with that, I'm going to end the recording, and thank you again for spending your evening with us.